Welcome to the Sharon Friends of Conservation's Billings Loop Botanical Trail. The trail was begun in 2012 as an Eagle Scout project by Rahul Polu. Since then, with the help of Sharon Conservation Commission and a number of plant and forest experts, the trail is slowly evolving. The site for the trail was chosen since it offers a wide variety of ecosystems within a convenient area. The trail is divided into 4 zones to make it easier to locate and identify species. The video here will at some point be accompanied by a portable guidebook. Future videos may explore the trail in different months as species go through seasonal changes. The species here were recorded in mid-July 2019. So, sit back and enjoy some virtual botanizing with our Massachusetts Audubon naturalist, Michael.
This is commonly a plant, this herbaceous plant commonly known as Indian pipe. It's one of those saprophytic plants that feeds on dead decaying matter, maybe the roots of trees that have died and things like that. And it doesn't have any chlorophyll. It gets its nutrients from almost like a fungus, you know, from things that are kind of dying in the ground. Kind of neat. And this is the flower, actually, of the plant. This is wild oats, or Cecil bellwort, and that's a neat little plant you find. Looks like Solomon seal, and in fact it's related to Solomon seal and other lilies. This is common buckthorn, not the European, not as invasive. It's an exotic, but not as invasive. So it has this kind of unique arcuate venation like a dogwood, you know, but toothed leaves. Partridge berry is another common ground cover in oak pine forests in general, and got a unique little plant, evergreen, and its flowers now, kind of late June. This is called beaked hazelnut because there's a little beak here on the nut. It's also a member of the birch family that lives in these forests that we're currently in, what they call mixed mesophytic, so lots of deciduous trees. So this is maple leaf viburnum. Has these lobes here, you know, toothed lobes like a red maple, and leaves are opposite each other. American chestnut, very important part of our forest at one time, and back there in the sunshine is another one that's coming up and doesn't get too tall. Very important part of our forest still, and doesn't produce seed like it used to because it gets maybe this big and it dies from the disease, but the root doesn't die, so it's just the stem that dies back. Okay, and some still are very tough and they keep living. A nice little oak. You don't find too many oak seedlings. That's a white oak seedling. Usually the deer get those and they eat them up. So that's future. That's a future tree. Here's a nice red maple. Red maple, a very common little tree you find in these forests. It doesn't quite replace the American chestnut. Here's some American chestnuts over here. Okay, that are trying to grow up. Maybe this understory American chestnut will grow to be a big tree someday. Cap mushroom, or Basidiomycete. Basidiomycete, I don't know the exact. So a wood rotting fungus. Another one of those swamp plants here again is high bush blueberry. And there are the little blueberries. Oh, look at that. With the crowns. Blueberries with the crowns. You still not convinced? Still not convinced of that? You can look at the branches, which younger branches, last year's growth even tend to be greenish. And the leaves themselves, if you see the leaves, very dull underneath. Huckleberry has those little yellow spots. And huckleberry won't get this tall either. So, you know, once you get this tall, that's it. Pretty great. So the blueberries themselves will ripen by late July, early August. The most common plant in swamps. Maybe not along a stream, but certainly swamps, edges of ponds. This is pepperbush. Sweet pepperbush, or clethra, and obovate leaf, what they call obovate, kind of tooth near the end there, with the fruiting structures that are terminal, right on the end. pretty soon, well, not soon, I would say by late July, early August, white flowers come out of this, and you can smell them a mile away. There you go.
Oh, yeah.
There's the white flowers coming out. About a month or so, those will really be out, open. Smell them a mile away. Very perfumey. Not a lot of herbaceous plants in general, but the bracken fern, just as a fern goes, is common. And you have this fern, there's almost like a whorl. There are 3 branches of it, kind of makes like a whorl. So this is common in these very oak pine forests where the soil is very acidic. Check this out. This is pretty great. Here, possibly, and certainly up there, pileated woodpeckers most likely have been trying to excavate, looking for insects and even maybe a cavity to nest in. And this tree, pileated woodpecker, a very large woodpecker in our forests that are good size like this, in forests that have trees that are of good size, you know, large diameter. We're leaving zone 1, which was more of a south slope, kind of steep slope, and now we're entering zone 2, which is a little more of a gently sloping area here. Oh, and here's another fern that tends to be common when you have a little bit more moisture here, and they grow in large areas. This is hay-scented fern, and smells nice. There's not a lot of diversity, I know. Whoa! Even these. Here's some huckleberry that have flowered and are starting to, their fruit is starting to develop. Nice. Huckleberry, kind of a neat plant. Looks like blueberry. Ooh, but it's different. You're not really sure. You can eat them, but they're different because their leaves have these little yellow dots underneath them. So a little different than blueberry. Here's another plant that is very indicative or common in our oak pine forests. And this is spotted wintergreen, a early to midsummer flowering herbaceous plant. The leaves of a pink lady slipper might flower next year. Kind of neat. Acidic, found in these acidic soils of the oak pine forest. The smallest and probably most common plant that is easily overlooked in our forest is the Canada Mayflower, or wild lily of the valley. Here, just flowered a few weeks ago, all over the forest there, forest floor. The most common little plant. Yes, could be poison ivy. Poison ivy would grow, kind of looks like it with the leaves of 3 here. It grows in kind of moisture locations. This right here, with the toothed leaves and maybe some little thorns on it, is one of our raspberries, so rubus species, a plant that comes in and invades areas that are disturbed. The deer like this one. And so anyway, greenbrier has all these really sharp thorns. You kind of a shiny, unique little leaf there. Deer love them. They see evidence of deer browse. That's okay. This stuff's all over the place. And native. Very interesting. Little wood rotting fungus. Not sure exactly what that is. Not sure. Very interesting. Wood rotting fungus. So with our oak trees, I think the things to notice are the leaf-feeding insects. And no doubt, most of the leaf feeding here was done by a type of gypsy moth. Or a type of caterpillar called a gypsy moth, sorry. Although the curling, that's something else. They get, oaks get this disease. Yeah, they do, yeah. And the pee on you and stuff.
It's not good for them to get toxins.
Right. In our forest is a very ancient plant in terms of plants that have been on Earth. This is a club moss. And this type of club moss right here, we call it tree club moss. Sometimes mistaken for a pine tree. Oh no, this is very different. Also known as Lycopodium. Probably one of the more common club mosses in our forests, our oak pine forests. Eastern red cedar tree that you do find, not always so common here, maybe more common on the top of hills, or hilltops communities, but also common in on farms, but not near in the forest. So very kind of a shaggy bark kind of thing, and we can't find the needles on this. This tree grows very slowly, and the wood, like chestnut, we call that resilient wood. That's wonderful wood people had used for fence posts and all that kind of stuff a long time ago. So near that, the Canada Mayflower, in our oak pine forest, you can also find Sarsaparilla. Sarsaparilla. There's so much to learn about stone walls. Stone walls here being an amazing habitat for, chipmunks and mice, and also the weathering and erosion of these rocks. Most of these rocks here in Sharon that make up our stone walls are that's Sharon syenite, right? It's kind of a granite, kind of igneous rock, and when they weather and erode, that has helped to make our soils very, very acidic or slightly acidic. And hence why the oaks and pines tend to grow pretty well here. This is black gum, Nyssa sylvatica. So black gum sometimes here, and certainly down through the Appalachians, will grow on kind of dry areas as well as attaining the best growth down in the wetlands. So funny that it's here. These witch hazel shrubs, so lovely. They're growing in multiple stems there. Mixing in with other trees here is an invasive exotic. This tree right here, this is Norway maple. How do I know the difference? Well, the leaves are slightly wider than a sugar maple, and invasive exotic, if I take one of the leaves off, watch what happens. If I pull one of these leaves off, you might notice, ooh, a little whitish sap kind of comes out. It's hard to see it. Come on, come out of there, ready? A little whitish sap. Great way to tell this tree apart from a sugar maple. Is another one of our American hazel or beaked hazelnut shrubs, as is right up here. Beaked hazelnut shrub, important part of shrub in our forests here. Okay. This is a maple leaf viburnum that's starting to go to seed. Over here we have one of these shelf fungus or a type of a wood rotting fungus that grows almost like what they call a colony. So some people may know this as turkey tail, but anyway, it's taking that wood and eating it up and turning it into more fungus. So you're kind of a woodland goldenrod. I don't believe it's that blue stem, but it's one of those goldenrods that'll come up in the autumn. So August, I would say late summer, early autumn. Here, a little invasive exotic, kind of. Here's your little wood sorrel. That's all over the place. So, there's your grapevine. Very common once we get down to the kind of moist soils. That's one of the avens. Isn't that just a neat plant? Okay, so you don't always find this, and growing up in Vermont, avens, one of the avens plants, a member of the rose family, tends to be a little more common. So neat little leaves that grow right on the stem, and the flowers starting to open up here. So probably a whitish flower. Right next to the avens, a lot of these touch-me-nots or jewelweed, and this little plant. This, that I learned, is hog peanut. And so it's a little, a neat little vine related to the legume family. Has a pink flower that comes out pretty soon. But you want to know your flowers? Newcombs is great. This nice little book right here, Pearson Field Guide, will help you learn plants by the different families, and has nice little icons that help you identify families based upon certain physical characteristics. Jewelweed there? Or has it flowered already? What the heck? Wow, that actually looks like the seed pods. It may, this thing, oh, look at this. This may be the seed pods of a touch-me-not or jewelweed. You touch it, it should burst. It's not ready yet. It has to be rounded. So when this little seed pod gets a little more pregnant, a little bigger, you touch it, the seed pops out. And we're going past the intersection of zone 3 and 4 and continuing now on zone 4. Back to the parking area. Oh, look at that. Oh, one of those emerald jewel wings, right? That damselfly. Isn't that fantastic? So there it goes. Sometimes very blue, iridescent blue, sometimes greenish, black wings. Nothing looks like that. Looking. There's a lot here. Things we've seen before, though. There's a sugar maple. Here's a hickory you don't tend not to find. I like to call this a pignet hickory, but actually looking at the the bud itself, kind of a sulfur yellow bud. Not one I've seen a lot here in Sharon. This, I believe, is a bitternut hickory. Also tend not to find smaller ash trees unless you really look, because they don't do so well in the understory as well. You got to notice this one is when you go up about 10 feet or so, it's like expands out. You know, what's happened to that tree? I know there are different insects that get in there, boring insects, and maybe diseases that get in there that cause that to happen. So American beech. As a tree you can find in these forests, mixed mesophytic forests, as well sometimes as oak and pine forests. A very dominant northern hardwood when you get farther north up into the mountains. And sometimes in this area it can dominate, especially on cooler sites. Leaves look kind of like the chestnut, kind of this elliptical leaf here, pointed, small teeth. Okay, but the bark is the key. This one, geez, you don't have the leaves on it. Bark is smooth. Look at that smooth grayish bark. Nothing looks like that. Virginia creeper crawling up that. There we go. Witch hazel, the leaf uneven base, and I love that this time of year, spring into early summer, we have the new growth, which has, you know, different colors to it. The leaf hasn't made food for the tree yet, so you got all these colors there. Spice bush growing close here, kind of dull leaves, you know. And we see that here, we see it over there, near the wetland, and also with our mixed mesophytic forest. That's another hop hornbeam or ironwood with the peeling bark, the leaves. Again, kind of like birch leaves. New York fern sometimes grows together in a clump or singly, and again, the fronds, a small fern. Those fronds tend to get a little bit smaller as you get down towards the base. Oh yes, on the other side, you can find the little fertile, what they call sori. Witch hazel is this little shrub right here. Tends to grow with many different stems. Anyway, little leaf It's kind of uneven at the base. Very common as we get towards our wetlands here, you know. And so witch hazel will flower in the autumn and winter, usually autumn, November, December, and it produces this little capsule-like fruit, which is kind of neat, that will open kind of summer, autumn sometime, and shoots the seed out. Isn't that neat? So that's got to mature a little bit more. And you also may notice witch hazel, and kids like this time of year, tends to have a funny little bump on it. It looks like a witch's hat or something. And so there's a little aphid-like insect that lays an egg in the leaf and causes these little galls to form. Pignut hickory, and I know this one's a little bit different, mainly because of the bud. The leaves are off, you got to use the bud. This bud is a small bud, kind of rounded, not yellowish. Okay, and it's got a good number of leaflets, but not too many. 5, maybe a few more leaflets. The forest here is kind of if you look out, mostly deciduous trees, and this is sometimes known as a mixed mesophytic forest with oaks and maples and black gum and other plants, maybe trees you find in where you're near streams and swamps, things like that. Very richer soils, hickories and things too, and we're kind of right on the edge of this kind of forest and an oak pine forest, which is probably the most common forest we have here. The different oaks you find in here are either black and red oaks or this white oak, which tends to grow slowly. Lovely old tree, very slowly. Many of the sugar maples in our area, I think, were brought here for sugaring purposes or for for homes to make the place look nice, for aesthetics. And so the seeds, get onto a forest. So this tends not to grow so well in these oak pine forests, but it can. It's much more common down lower in the mixed mesophytic forests near streams. Virginia creeper, a ground kind of a plant, ground running plant. Sometimes it's a vine that goes up trees. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 different leaflets in this plant. So not poison ivy, related to it, but not poison ivy. But very important part of our forest and a native. So this right here, this is a white ash. And the bark, it's hard to find the leaves of this, but they have these very kind of thin furrows, or thin ridges rather, and the furrows are kind of deep. So white ash, Fraxinus americana, very distinctive ridges here. American hornbeam, different than hop hornbeam, and the bark gives this one away. Nice muscly kind of a bark. Some people call this musclewood, so kind of a rounded, convoluted bark. Source of many allergies in May into early June. Source of many allergies, the flowers with the pollen from oak trees. It's common, in moist areas. Meadow rue.
Meadow rue or
Meadow rue, R-U-E, meadow rue. One of those Rubiaceae family, anyway. Pretty common, moist areas. And this is a white oak seedling in our forest here, and not commonly found. So it's not common, let's say, that we find an oak seedling. Many of those seedlings get eaten by deer. Many other times, the acorn just doesn't germinate. A black cherry, and here we finally found a black cherry. Oh, little lanceolate leaves, shiny. Wild lettuce tends to grow in little moister soils. One of them, I'm not sure exactly what species, but we can call it wild lettuce. That's neat. Is another one of those viburnums related to the maple leaf viburnum. This one is a little more of a kind of a teardrop shaped leaf with a teeth. This one's called arrowwood. A small American chestnut. We call this really stump sprout. So American chestnut looks similar to our beech and is a relative of the American beech. Once again, we've seen this. See ant, longer lanceolate shaped leaf, very strong, good teeth there. This is the bark of a pitch pine. And pitch pine tends to be a tree that grows on sandy, nutrient-poor soils. These soils here in the oak pine forest tend to be fine sandy loams, a little finer. This is high bush blueberry. I don't see the blueberries on it, but I know it's blueberry because the leaves kind of look like that. And the twigs, even some of the older growth, tend to be green. Not a good example, but some of these twigs tend to stay green a little longer. We're just leaving zone 2 and now entering zone 3. This orchid, flower coming up in the leaf axils, and if you really want to know what kind of orchid it is, I will look that up. Orchids, green. Look for green flowers, ready? False hellebore. Helleborine, this is an invasive kind of thing, and flowers are terminal. Isn't that neat? Typical of this moister forest here, especially near a stream, is a type of fern called a New York fern. And what's very interesting about this is the little fronds, as you go from the middle to the base, they tend to get smaller. Another American beech, very full. I think something about this is, American chestnut would be a little taller. This tends to be very full with foliage and right.
They're not as broad.
Right. Yes. American chestnut. The leaf is going to be longer. The teeth will be bigger.